All right, 6 o'clock, let's get started. I'd like to call work session, Belton City Council meeting, July 13th, 2021. What items do we have tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. The first item we have, and the only item we have for the work session this evening, is an update on our monthly financial report, and Sheila Ernson is here to report that. Sheila?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're going to go over the May monthly financial report. It was emailed out to everybody on June 18th, and I went ahead and printed out a copy of the council's short report and put it at the dais for you. If you look, the very first page is the dashboard. Our sales tax is trending ahead, and our fees are trending ahead of what we had budgeted, and we're behind on utility franchise taxes and on fines, and everything else is pretty neutral. I want to just kind of fast forward to page 5, if that's okay. Basically, this, because we have the fund balance reserve requirement, this is one page that I always look at. Just briefly, we have the fund balance percentage, which is 24.63% at the end of May. I was looking back to May of last year, and May of last year was 14.34%. So we're up about 10.29%. And of course, when we have that big of a differential, I always want to know why. So when I was looking into that, there are two things that really make that up. First of all, in May of last year, we had paid our workers' comp and our liability and casualty insurance. And in the general fund, that's close to $1 million. And so those numbers May of last year are going to be lower, and we will make that payment, or have made that payment already, in June of this year. And so it's kind of a timing difference. At least that's about half of the difference. The other half of the difference is really the CARES Act funds that we received last fiscal year. That is one reason that our fund balance is up. If you turn to page 6, page 6 is the summary. This, if you want a quick glance at how the city is doing overall, I really recommend that you just take a, this is a good summary, a good place to look. And I'm doing a lot of comparison from last year to this year, looking for anything that might be alarming, anything that would be different from last year to this year, that would either say, oh, we're doing really good, or gosh, we're not doing as well. And so some of the things that I noted, this year in our revenues in the general fund, we're about $28,000 in wireless franchise taxes below where we were last year. We are also down in gas franchise tax, but that is timing. And so I'm not concerned about that at all. But I am a little bit concerned about the wireless. And then a big difference between this year and last year is this year we are down $73,000 less in building permits. I'm not necessarily concerned about that, but just a difference from year to year, and it's one of the items that I noted to keep track of, and I'll be watching going forward. And then in our expenditures, while our revenues are less than they were at this time last year, our expenditures are more, and our expenditures are, they shouldn't necessarily be more, or that was surprising to me, because remember in May of last year we had already paid our workers' comp and our liability and casualty insurance by about $1 million. But so I was really digging into that. Mostly the reason that we have higher expenditures in the general fund this year, as of May, is because we did a $196,000 transfer to the water fund that we didn't do last year. We did a $1 million transfer to general capital, which we didn't do last year. And then our salaries and benefits, our salaries are up about $91,000 for the 2 months through May, as compared to last year, the 2 months through May. And our benefits are up about $45,000. And so I do anticipate, because we will be paying the insurance in June, please don't be alarmed or surprised to see a drop in fund balance next month. And I'm planning on talking to you guys about the June financial report at the next meeting, and we'll just try to have that monthly financial update every second meeting of the month, if that's all right with you guys, to make sure that we're answering any questions you might have, and just making sure that you are aware of what's going on. And that's all I have. If you have any questions.
You mentioned the CARES Act money, and I did actually have someone ask me last week, and I forgot. What things did we spend CARES Act money on? And since we have money left over from that, is there still stuff that can be spent within CARES Act? How does that work?
So what we did, at first we had to spend money and get reimbursed. And so our money for the CARES Act really was spent mostly on technology, a lot on cleaning supplies, and also some cleaning items for like the aeroclaves that were able to sanitize our ambulances, and then we bought additional ones to help sanitize city buildings, especially at the jail, and so a lot of safety equipment, and then also computer equipment, because we had to do a lot of working from home, and just had a lot of need in that area. And then, other than that, they changed the law and the guidance going forward, like about halfway through, and we were able to go ahead and get reimbursed for all of our police salary and benefits up to the maximum amount. And so we went ahead and submitted that. Those expenses had already been budgeted, which is why you have the additional fund balance added, because we had already had those included in our budget. So we got reimbursed for items that we had already planned to spend for with the salary and benefits for police. Does that make sense? Good.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, with that, we'll adjourn the work session, and you don't have anything else, do you?
No.
And that will adjourn the work session, call the regular meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilman Savage will lead the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No personal appearances. Consent agenda. One motion non-debatable to approve the recommendations noted. Any member of the council may ask for an item to be taken from the consent agenda for discussion and separate action.
Present.
Mayor, before you start that, we need to do the roll call, please.
Oh,
Oh.
sorry. Yeah, sorry. My
Mayor
bad.
Larkey,
Here.
Councilmember Savage,
Here.
Councilmember Powell. Here. Councilmember Trutzel,
Here.
Councilmember Kraft,
Here.
Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Goff,
Present.
Councilmember Lawson,
Here.
Councilmember Peak.
Here.
All right, consent agenda. One motion non-debatable to approve the do I have to read that again then? Or we got a motion and a second already?
You already have a motion and a second.
I didn't hear the motion in second.
I presented.
Who was second?
Oh, I thought we did.
Who would like to be second?
Oh,
Thanks.
sorry. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Regular agenda. A motion approving the first reading of Bill 2021-36.
An ordinance readopting ordinance number 91-2073 as amended, establishing a procedure to disclose potential conflict of interest and substantial interest for certain municipal officials.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Motion,
Motion.
second.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Do you want to give any information on this for?
What kind of, since we have some new people here, Mayor, I guess my only question is what kind of things are you looking for conflicts of interest from us? Some family member works for the city or something that we have a contract with the city?
Yes, both of those issues would be typically included on this financial disclosure. This is something that is required by Missouri law. You're allowed to do it every other year, but most cities, including the city of Belton, do it every year to make sure that you don't ever miss it. Things that are typically looking for is if you sale or lease property to the city, if you have transactions more than $500 or $5,000 in total, sort of that information. And if typically we do a training, so I could prepare a full training on conflicts of interest, or I could also share with the new council members the presentation from, I think, last year that has this information in it and more.
Is there a form that, I didn't see anything up here that,
There is a form provided by the Missouri Ethics Commission that the city utilizes and would be filled out if you do hit any of the things listed in the ordinance.
so if there's nothing listed, we don't have to do anything?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mayor, I move for a second reading.
We have a motion for a second reading and a second for a second reading.
Who was second, please?
Tim? Any discussion on the second reading? Seeing none. All in favor, is that a roll call? All in favor? All in favor for a
Aye.
second reading? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Motion approving the second reading of Bill 2021-36.
An ordinance readopting ordinance number 91-2073 as amended, establishing a procedure to disclose potential conflict of interest and substantial interest for certain municipal officials.
Present.
We have a motion and a second. Did you get it?
I believe so. Thank you.
Any discussion? Seeing none, can I have a roll call, please?
Just one moment. Yes. Mayor Larkey,
Yes.
Councilmember Savage,
Aye.
Councilmember Powell. Yes. Pretzel,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Goff,
Yes.
Lawson,
Aye.
Peak.
Aye.
That motion carries. B, a motion approving the first reading of Bill 2021-37.
An ordinance amending Section 6-96, Number D, of the Code of Ordinances, City of Belton, Missouri, as it relates to the conduct of special hearings regarding the suspension or revocation of business licenses.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion and any information that we need?
Yes, this ordinance will amend who actually is the official conducting hearings regarding the suspension or revocation of business licenses. Currently, it is the license officer who is the city clerk, and also that same entity, the license officer, is responsible for sending out the notices of that hearing. And when you conduct one of those hearings, one of the key things you have to do is you have to lay the groundwork that you sent out the notices properly. It's a little difficult to lay that groundwork when the person that sent out the notices is also the person sitting at the dais as the hearing officer. So the way that this is being amended is to designate the city manager or their designee as the hearing officer for these special hearings, with the intent that in each one of these special hearings, the city manager will designate an administrative law judge who has experience in this form of administrative law and is competent to rule on any evidentiary objections and other things. and it will also help streamline the administrative hearing process as well.
Any questions?
I have one, Mayor.
Sure.
Was there anything prompting this? Was in effect in the first place?
This is something that I think we had a business license revocation hearing my second week here as a city attorney, and I kind of pointed it out, and it's just sat, and then recently kind of started to go back through and ensure that these things kind of are a little bit more better, I guess would be the best way to put it, because it's fine as it is, but this is just a better way to handle it. And the other thing to kind of note is that when you do an administrative hearing, the rules of evidence are lowered. They're not your typical courtroom rules, but there are still rules of evidence. And I told the mayor this earlier, but there's nobody in this room, including myself, that is competent to make evidentiary determinations on objections. So getting somebody that is actually able to, do that and has that level of competence, I think is important, not only for the city, but also for the license holder as well.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We have a motion and a second for a second reading. Any discussion on the second reading? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion approving the second reading of Bill number 2021-37.
An ordinance amending Section 6-96, Number D of the Code of Ordinances, City of Belton, Missouri, as it relates to the conduct of special hearings regarding the suspension or revocation of business licenses.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, can I have a roll call?
Mayor Larkey,
Yes.
Councilmember Savage. Aye. Powell.
Yes.
Trutzel.
Aye.
Kraft.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Goff.
Yes.
Lawson.
Aye.
Peak.
Aye.
Motion carries. I was just waiting for you to get caught up. Okay. Motion approving the first reading of bill. Well, she was typing. I was just making sure she was getting ready to get caught up. Motion approving the first reading of Bill 2021-38.
An ordinance approving a final plat for Southview Commerce Center, South Fourth Plat, a tract of land in the northwest quarter of Section 1, Township 46 North, Range 33 West, in the city of Belton, Cass County, Missouri, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to sign the plat for recording with the Cass County Recorder's Office.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes.
Councilman Powell.
Plat 4 is part of a major reconfiguration of the North Point warehouses at the Southview Commerce Center and contains Building 4. The rezoning of this area was passed by a previous city council on April 13th. This plat is within 100 feet of Belton residents' homes. Also, the final plan approved by the Planning Commission shows that contrary to the 3 previous buildings at Southview Commerce Center, Building 4 has been rotated 90 degrees such that truck parking and loading docks are directly facing our residents' properties on Grand and Hill Streets and new residential properties in the planned development to the east of Building 4. These plans show trucking facilities at the very east and west edges of Plat 4. As I pointed out in written communications, residential areas on both the west and the east sides of Building 4 will have noise levels above the noise standard our staff submitted to North Point several years ago. In addition, Building 4 has no berm or other screening between it and the residential properties on Grand and Hill Streets. I am a representative of Ward 4 residents. I believe if these truck facilities were planned for any area within 100 feet of our homes, we would vote against this plat. Right now, Belton has the opportunity to work with North Point to alleviate this planned impact on their neighbors. I respectfully urge your vote against this plat.
Councilman Trutzel.
Councilman, you live on a street, Y Highway, about 75 feet off, I don't know, from the center line, which has probably the second highest traffic load in the city. in addition to heavy gravel trucks coming up there and farm implements as well. Your noise level, have you ever taken one outside your house? Because I would think it's going to be higher than what we're talking about. You know, I'm not qualified in any shape or form to make evaluations on noise. I leave that to people who are trained in that area. I'm not sure that you truly are authorized. Now, I understand that you have people complain about it, but I'm not sure that there is adequate information on your part that would lead me to vote no on this. So I'll be voting yes.
Councilman Clark.
Mayor, I think the city of Belton and other cities have the process we go through, and this was gone through the planning and zoning process. I've sat on that, and I think some of the other members on this board have sat on the planning and zoning, and they did their due diligence to look this over, and that's our advisory board for us to look at. I think our time to go out there and do a noise study is not during the construction phase, it's after the project is completed. Because I went over there Sunday, Mr. Powell, and all I heard was traffic noise from the highway. And I got out in people's backyards. I got up on 157th Street. I stopped somewhere down Allen Street. I stopped where the little parkway goes, and I got all the way down to the other end. And I'm like, all I hear is traffic. So I don't think it's fair for us to sit there and do a noise study when they're doing construction. After construction's done, I think we need to go back and do a noise study and see where we're at. But again, I'll be voting yes for this. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councilwoman Crowe.
I have heard a lot from the neighbors there, since I'm just across the highway from 71 from that ward. Several of them did reach out to me. They are concerned about all of the noise. I do want to see us to be able to get to an area that we can help them be happier with what's going on and make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that, things like construction at 6 a.m. isn't happening, and I believe we are moving in the right direction with that. So while I do want to see us continue to move forward and making our citizens happy, I too will be voting yes.
Anybody else? Councilwoman.
My only comment, Councilman Caff, I've sat on this board 2 different times, and I go back, and we had 2 big things back in early 2000s people didn't want, and one was Carnegie Village, and I tell people all the time because nobody ever wants anything in their backyard. And we at one time had a baseball complex coming into that field right there, so I look at what we put in our backyard is better than what a baseball complex would have been, and a soccer fields, and the night lights and the noise and all that stuff that a baseball or a complex would have created. So we're never going to win when you sit in these seats. And I tell people all the time, I think we have to do the best we can do, and I think doing a noise ordinance after construction and making sure that the berms are put in place that we required. And I think that's our staff's job to make sure that's all done how it was done in the planning stages. So I look at some of the projects I voted on 20 years ago, and I look at them and I still smile saying, hey, we had a lot of noise that people didn't want that stuff, and today it's a beautiful thing. And my neighborhood's another one that was negative, and I think we have a nice neighborhood, but nobody ever wants anything built in their backyard, and I apologize. We can't stop it.
I'd just like to say I appreciate both your comments and all 3 of your comments, and you're all right. The residents I've talked to have said, well, we're happy that they're warehouses and not apartment complex, even with the possibility of other things going on. But I guess I want to be crystal clear that there's been a lot of work done by North Point, good work done, to berm off, to screen off, and to actually turn the warehouses such that the loading docks are running in a north-south way, and hence are not shooting noise towards residents. But this fourth one, for some reason, maybe because it's fronting 155th Street, is turned 90 degrees, and so now the loading of the trucks is now directly pointed at residents on the west side, which are already there, and the residents on the east side that are going to be moving there once North Point develops those lots and those houses. So there is a difference there. The other difference is there's berms all the way along the east side, at least on the plans. On the west side, though, there's no berm. So the visibility when you come out to get your newspaper at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. is to look right to your left or your right if you live on those two streets, and there's the back end of trucks, or maybe trucks actually beeping at that time. I don't know. We don't know who's going to go into that building, but the plans show when you look at them that the loading docks and the parking facilities for the trucks are pointed right at the residents. So I agree about the noise study. We need to have a second noise study. I agree about balancing the better good of Belton versus residents. You can't please everybody, but this seems to me really overboard in coming close to residents.
I've had several meetings with key North Point people, and they assured me that they're going to do everything that they've agreed to, and even more if that's what it takes to satisfy everybody. So
Okay.
I will be voting yes for this. Any other discussion?
Having been on planning and zoning for 6 years, a number of years ago, we went through a lot of, as Dave said, people don't want it in their backyard if it comes to them, no matter what it is. One of the ones we went through, you talked about one you experienced, one we had was the decorative rock out on 58 Highway, there, West Belton. Everybody came up and hated it, did not want it, wanted walls built. Turned out to be one of the finest places around, very Belton community-minded people. It's not an easy thing to do, but I think that once it's built, if there's a problem, we can confront that, and the people always seem to be workable. I know that Dave Christie has been on anything that he's ever done. So having come off the planning and zoning and knowing that they recommend it, I put my faith in them and will vote yes.
Seeing no more discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No. Motion carries. D, motion approving the first reading of Bill 2021-39.
An ordinance approving a final plat for Southview Commerce Center 5th plat, being a replat of certain lots in Sunset Hills 2nd plat, as specified in the plat legal description. The replat being a tract of land in the northeast quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 1, Township 46 North, Range 33 West, in the city of Belton, Cass County, Missouri, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to sign the plat for recording with the Cass County Recorder's Office.
Present. Second.
We have 2 motions and 2 seconds.
By the same guys.
Any discussion? Or any information?
Only thing I would say is like, it's gonna be nice to have some more houses being built over there. I mean,
That's not this one.
that's not this one? Which one's that one? The
That's
third
the
one?
next one, yeah.
Okay. All right.
But this is the part of the berm, so.
This is the berm to the east.
The
vacant-
berm, got
Vacant
it.
land and the berm to the east of the building. So, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Now I'm
All
gonna go
opposed?
there.
Motion carries. E, a motion approving the first reading of Bill 2021-40.
An ordinance approving a final plat for Sunset Hills 3rd plat, being a replat of certain lots in Sunset Hills 2nd plat and Sunset Hills Addition, as specified in the plat legal description. The replat being a tract of land in the northeast quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 1, Township 46 North, Range 33 West, in the city of Belton, Cass County, Missouri, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to sign the plat for recording with the Cass County Recorder's Office.
Present.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Now you can talk
Oh,
about it.
now I can talk? Now, just, I know this subdivision's been kind of stalled out since probably '07 or '08, so it's kind of be nice to see it finished off, and I'm sure there'll be some builders lined up to build in there, so I'd be excited to get more people over in that area.
How many lots, Dave?
25.
25. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. F, motion approving first reading of Bill 2021-41.
An ordinance approving a final plat for Tradition's Fifth Plat, a tract of land in the southwest quarter of Section 18, Township 46 North, Range 32 West, in the city of Belton, Cass County, Missouri, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to sign the plat for recording with the Cass County Recorder's Office.
Second.
Give a motion first.
Oh, present? I thought he grunted over there, that's what I thought.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mayor,
Yes.
only that I again was on the planning and zoning back when this was originally being done back in somewhere between '06 and '10. And there was a huge amount of homes to be built down there, and they all got crushed in the '08 crash. This is really good to see this coming back. And
It is.
I'm glad to see that happening.
It is. Any more discussion?
I just have a comment, and maybe Perry and Dave or someone, or Tim have, or Chad have perspective on this, but the original, I went back and looked at the original plats when they were approved, and it said sidewalks were required along the major roads. Is that still the case on this? And that's just my fundamental ignorance of how exactly to read these plat maps, but.
I think we require
Yeah, we
sidewalks
still
on
require
one
'em.
side.
Well, the Traditions Planned Unit Development was approved originally in 2006, and there was a development agreement that called out sidewalks in some locations, and then sidewalks just on one side of the street in other locations. And sitting here tonight, I just don't remember exactly what the extent of that development agreement was, so.
Well, they've done an excellent job of sidewalks inside the development. I'm talking about the ones on Cambridge and Mullen.
Well, Mullen will have a new sidewalk when the road's improved
Okay,
with the TDD.
okay. And this one's on Cambridge.
Right, there's a road out to Cambridge, right, yes.
So the fact that I guess my question is, the fact that we don't show the sidewalk on this plat thing, is that something that's typically not shown on plat, but the fact that the 2006 document says sidewalks will be on major roads also applies to this? Is that the way it works?
Yes,
Okay.
sidewalks and curb lines aren't necessarily shown on a plat.
Okay.
There's just the right-of-way edges are shown.
Okay, okay,
Yes, sir.
cool.
Anybody
Excuse
else?
me.
Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Are you asking, are they required to put walks in along Cambridge in this case?
Well, the 2006 document
Microphone.
reads to me like Belton asked the developer.
Turn your mic on.
I'm sorry. That Belton asked the developer, or added as a requirement for the developer, to put sidewalks on the major roads. So that, and like Dave said, and Greg in my drive around pointed out, there will be sidewalks along Mullen. So I'm just asking, not all of, of course, not all of Cambridge, but the part of Cambridge that abuts this new development.
Well, I don't recall either, but I would think, given the fact that we've got to do road work out through there, that would go in during that road work. But if you'll also remember, or if you look back, you'll see that there was commercial along Mullen. That was a whole different layout. It was not even close to what it is today. That's all been changed. So ever how far you go back, you're liable to find whatever you want to find.
Yeah.
But I still can't see how that we can, I'm not gonna say how it's written because I don't remember either, but can't see how we can take someone that is coming off of
a street building within to have to build that walk along that road whenever we don't even have curb there. Is that what you're asking? For?
Well, I'm just pretty much generally asking, are there sidewalks on this plat drawing? That was, and number one, Dave said they don't necessarily show sidewalks on this drawing. So these lines here don't talk about sidewalks, because I can't really make out exactly what they're talking about. But in the 2006, unless it was amended, it says there will be sidewalks along the Traditions property along the main roads. And I haven't seen any reference to anything other than the 2000. In fact, I think even this thing that came in front of us tonight talked about the original thing being in 2006. So if there was something more recent, then I would think they would have referenced that. But
There is something more recent because that whole deal went broke and come back for a whole new beginning. But exactly what that is, I don't recall either. So
okay,
But I wouldn't
Well-
think that we would hold them to put a sidewalk
I wouldn't either.
on Cambridge since it's,
Traditions wouldn't even back up to Cambridge.
Yeah, there's a
it
little
does,
bit.
does.
this does,
The new
not-
one here
this
does.
new plat does.
Like-
But I would not think that, that would be in the plan, that they would have to put a sidewalk on Cambridge since it's unimproved and there's no curbs or nothing.
really? Okay. Well,
Just for that short section, that,
as I understand it, there's gonna be a full circle at Cambridge and Mullen, and I mean, are we saying that people that live down here are not gonna have, well, I guess we are saying they're not gonna have a sidewalk.
I'm not saying
fact, I
that's
think-
what's in the plan,
Yeah.
I'm just saying I can't imagine that we would do that on just a few hundred feet of Cambridge that's unimproved and no curbs and no gutters and,
But if we went all the way to Mullen, then it would serve a purpose because, well, I don't know. I don't know
They don't-
exactly where this circle is, and
yeah, Traditions don't control those other lots on Cambridge all the way over to Mullen, so
Okay.
that's something that ship has sailed there to do a sidewalk when they built that, so.
I guess my thing on Cambridge, Mayor, is like, they only have, 400 feet at the present time, and I know Cambridge is gonna be widened to 4 or 5 lanes here in the near future. But, I mean, it'd be no different than these 3 houses that did a lot split.
Yeah.
I mean, they would have to put sidewalks in front of their houses too if we require the people that own Traditions to do it, so we didn't require them, so I don't know why you want Traditions to do it. I mean, that's what I'm just saying, I mean, we gotta treat people equally, I mean, we didn't require this lot split to do it when they did that, so.
well, I'm sorry, you can go ahead.
No, that,
Go ahead.
Dave, wasn't this replatted when the Traditions came before us? Didn't they replat it because they put townhomes in there instead of houses and, I mean, a few,
Well, the Traditions Plan Development was revised in 2018.
okay?
Now, that did not affect this 5th plat. That was always single-family at this location.
Oh, in this particular
This
location?
particular location was always
Okay.
single-family. But there were some changes to the PUD up in the northern area. This is what you're remembering is correctly.
Okay, all righty, thank you.
All right. Any other discussion on 2021-41? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Any city council liaison reports? Go ahead.
Yeah, park update includes fall sports signups are underway, online registrations now accepted. The outdoor water park had 3 major leaks. The pool has now been open for 2 weeks and the facility has been very busy. The cost to fix the pool was $62,000, unfortunately an unbudgeted expense. Markey Park will host back-to-back World Series tournaments starting this Wednesday through Friday. The grid for next week has not yet been announced, but Markey Park will be busy, and due to weather, the parking lot crack, fill, and seal coat project has been delayed until July 30th. Reminder, the farmers market continues on Thursday evenings at Memorial Park from 4 to 7 p.m., and we have a full weekend of theater in the park. Both shows start at 8. Friday, July 30th is Once Upon a Mattress, and Saturday, July 31st is Songs for a New World.
Anybody else? I have nothing for tonight. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. The only items I have are just the reminder of the meetings that are coming up, and I have nothing further. Thank you.
Any communication from any city council? Councilman Clark?
I want to put the word out. Oops, I turned that on. I want to put the word out that one of our former employees that passed away a couple of years ago from multiple myeloma, just myeloma, Troy Shaw, they're going to have their first golf tournament to raise funds for a scholarship, and that's going to be on August 14th. So Troy not only worked for the Belton Police Department, but he also worked for the Belton School Department, and so very engaged in our community. So it's fitting for them to have a scholarship named after him. So I hope that the business community and individuals go out and support this. It's on August 14th, and we'll try to get more information out there for people. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councilman Powell?
Okay. As an elected representative of Ward 4, I move that we withhold all future certificates of occupancy at Southview Commerce Center until North Point Development gives the City of Belton a plan to address the inconsistencies between their original approved plans and their partially constructed development.
We have a motion on the table. Motion fails, no second.
May I make a motion, we adjourn?
We have a motion and a second to adjourn.
Oh.
No.
Sir, oh.
No. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, Councilman.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. So since the Facebook post on July 8th from Belton Police Department, stating that Belton Police Department will no longer be responding to non-emergency loose animal calls from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m., and that Belton Police Department will not accept animals relinquished at the department during these hours, my phone's been going off with calls and messages from citizens, nonprofit animal groups, area shelters, and even the Department of Agriculture. So this evening I wanted to ask if we could get clarification on when this change in public service happened and what the reasoning behind this change was.
Chief Lyons is our police chief, and he's over our animal control operations, and I believe he has some information to share this evening. Chief?
Originally, when I took over the police department, I did an assessment, and I'm continuing to do an assessment of different programs, and animal control is just one of those programs. And one of the things that we did in patrol was trying to reallocate sources towards some of the crime that we've been seeing. I think you've seen a lot of the Facebook posts that we've been doing here recently and the social media posts related to some of the things that we're concentrating on. But one of the things that I noticed in regards to our animal control program was we've had quite a uptick in 2019, 2020. Animal control handled 40% of the calls, and then patrol officers handled almost 60% of the calls for animal control, and that was a total of almost 1,471 calls. Now that was primarily due to the passing of an animal control officer, and there was a time period where we did not have one from January until June when we hired ACO Sarah Spies. And when we look at those calls for service, and we look at this year from when she came on from July 10th to July 10th of this year, we're seeing that she's handling about 63% of the calls, as opposed to 36% is being handled by patrol. And so I was looking at these figures and also looking at her overtime, which was budgeted, and we've also blown through her budget for overtime because we're asking more of her, and she's been very helpful. She comes to us from Overland Park and has a lot more skills and training as opposed to the previous animal control officer. And so we were looking for ways to be more effective. And we also looked at other communities and what they were doing. And we initially came up with protocols for dispatching animal control on June 10th. And then what we do is we look at those things and try to see if we can build a better mousetrap. And so we did on June 29th. We made some updates to that, and we ended up publishing that on July 8th when those things were established, when finally approved by me on July 7th. And that was only because the social media person that posts those things, we couldn't get it to him fast enough. But one of the things that I wanted to tell you is that when it comes to calls for service, I have a little chart here, and I'll just kind of quickly go through it. When we're talking about emergency calls, animal domestic bites in progress, we go. That's an emergency. Animal domestic bites not in progress under certain conditions. If it happened that day and then the person is at the hospital, we go. But if it's something that happened several days past where they're reporting it, or it happened the week, we wait till the next day until the animal control officer can come on. Animal domestic barking dogs, we go on those because we're trying to protect the quality of life for citizens, but we will insist that the person or the caller sign a complaint against the person. Check the welfare for animals. If we feel like we get information that the welfare of an animal is at risk, we go. Animal domestic dead animal, that would be considered a road hazard, or it's a domestic, like a dog or a cat killed on the side of the road, our officers go. If a domestic is in a trap, a citizen's trap that they've set on their property by themselves, we do not get involved in that because that is a private matter. An animal that is domestic, sick or injured, we go, but we also call out the animal control officer to respond because she has more skills to handle an injured dog or sick dog than we do. An animal that's wild and in a trap, we'll go. Animal wild, injured, or sick, we go too. We also will ask her assistance in those. And then animal control wild animals, it's a case-by-case basis. If someone reported a coyote and it was in the woods and it was not acting aggressively, it was not challenging other domestic animals or a person, we would not go, but if it did, we would. And so what we're looking here is we're constantly looking at these statistics and measuring our services and then sliding those on a sliding scale, and we will continue to do that while I'm police chief, because I just think that's the best way to provide services, is always ask those questions. But I think you might find this interesting. Overland Park, Leawood, Grandview, Cass County Sheriff's Department, Harrisonville PD, they all only go on emergency calls involving animal control, the same ones that I described. When it comes to Kansas City Animal Services, there's no police involvement whatsoever. Raymore, they're considering changes to their program when we talk to them, similar to what we did, because they're encountering some of the same things. They're wanting officers on the street. Pleasant Hill, police only respond to bite calls. And lastly, the Lee Summit Police Department. When I was a member of the Lee Summit Police Department, I was the major over the division that managed the animal control facility. And it's a substantial program where they actually have coverage in the day, evening, and then they have call out if possible. And so officers only are involved in emergency situations, or if they're asked for assistance from animal control officers, like say they encounter a citizen that's could possibly turn into a disturbance. And so I think what I'm saying in summary is we're in line with other communities in regards to these issues. We will do everything we can to try and work with outside groups. We have a great relationship with some of the local chapters. We've got a really good contract that we feel comfortable with Wayside Waves, and they're a good organization. I don't think we have the kind of problems that you've seen in the media on the Kansas side in regards to organizations that they work with. But again, I would say that we'll continually look at these kinds of things and manage our control over where officers are deployed and try not to put them in situations where they're not effective. The one thing I will say is that we've estimated that about 30 to 45 minutes is spent on calls for service by officers. And when we look at those times, we're thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 100 or up to 350 hours of patrol time is going to be saved by keeping our officers in service and going on calls that they're trained for.
Go ahead.
So for the most part, the biggest change is that in the past, officers would go on a stray dog call and pick up the animal and take it to wayside. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, I would just correct you in that. We would go on that dog running loose call, even if it wasn't a threat. But the thing is our officers were not very successful in catching those dogs, and they would be out of service for 30, 45 minutes before they'd come back into service. And so on occasion, they would catch those animals, bring them to the station, and then work through the process of trying to either reunite or put in a kennel in our facility. And we don't have that many kennels inside our garage facility, or transport up to wayside waves. But to say that we were 90% successful in that, we were not.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Any other counts? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, just a couple quick questions since we talked about this earlier, just so everybody has some context. It costs $150 every time animal control or a police officer takes a stray to wayside on behalf of the city. Is that correct?
There's different fees, but yes, that's the average fee for that service.
Gotcha. And then police officers are not necessarily equipped or trained to handle stray dogs in their patrol vehicles to get them to wayside waves, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I've learned a lot about this process, and I appreciate all the suggestions and concern from citizens. That's important. But I feel comfortable with what we discussed and how you guys are approaching that. So thank you.
Go ahead.
One more thing, Mayor, since
Go
we're
ahead. No, go ahead.
running early here, that's good. There's something I wanted to point out that's on Kentucky Road in our ward that's, I call it the Raymore Triangle. It's where Kentucky Road goes north and the shoot off to the new car wash over there to the stoplight by Lowe's. That is a dangerous situation there. My mother-in-law lives right there, and I mow that yard half the time, and I've almost got hit a couple of times by cars coming north on Kentucky, confused of what they're coming up on, and they hang left around this little island out there and almost have a head-on with someone coming south on Kentucky, and it's confusing. They just need to have a stop sign there to stop people coming north or south either way on Kentucky there. It's very confusing, and I've seen so many near wrecks there, and it's just one waiting to happen, and I'd like to point that out, that it's going to happen. And
He's making a note right now. Go ahead.
Well, I complained about that to my fellow council members. It was on. And they told me that Mr. Rokus wanted to design that. Is that true?
No.
Yeah, it was already designed before I was working over
Because you
there.
gotta take a right to go left, and I never figured this one out. I don't understand why they just didn't put a stop sign there on that little side road and keep Kentucky flowing, but maybe you can explain it to us.
Well,
Greg, I might be able to help.
Go right
When they
ahead.
came here before, that was one of the suggestions that they made, but council didn't like that. Our council didn't like that scenario. They wanted free-flowing traffic because they didn't want to hinder it because it had been that way before. So there was a lot of things that were thrown out that night, and from the suggestions that came from council, then they went back and then came up with this drawing and sent it back, and then council looked at this and
I know that I was told that we wanted our emergency vehicles to be able to go south without interruption. My question is, why didn't they put a stop sign on whatever that street is called going to the car wash or that hooks in with the stoplight?
coming from the south, going north up through the curve.
Well, why wasn't Kentucky Road just left north and south without stoplight or any stop signs and just that new road coming up?
either way, a stop sign going north on Kentucky would have just stopped people. You didn't need the island. or stop signs on the road going over to the car wash, one of the two.
Well, I think
But as
that,
of now, I was in the ditch there mowing the ditch, and a lady come north on Kentucky. She saw the aisle and didn't know what to do because she didn't want to turn right, and it appears that you have to turn right there, so she hung left. Car was coming south, and I was almost involved in that head-on, and I was in the ditch there. So it's
what's
not-
that road called over there? What's the new name?
I don't even know what the name of that road is now. I call it the car wash road, but
Well, I just figured that would have been a T and not whatever
Something
they
like that.
built. I mean, if it's
Not a
just
pork
gonna.
chop.
Huh?
Not a pork chop.
Yeah.
So we're happy to, Greg and I were just having a sidebar, and we're happy to convey that concern to the city of
it's
Raymore.
not good. Thank you.
I've had multiple complaints about that. It's just, I mean, I talked to Greg about it a year ago when it was first designed, and I'm like, I don't know what, you know, it's
Cars come
Raymore's
around that-
project.
Cars come around that corner too, going north off of that new road really fast. And there's a neighbor across the road from my mother-in-law and my mother-in-law who back out of their driveway there, and cars come around that curve at 30, 40 mile an hour, and they're 50 foot from hitting one of those people too. It's not a good situation.
All right. Take a look at it. Anybody else?
Can I renew my motion?
I would entertain that motion.
I will renew my motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We stand adjourned.